Hello. Okay, welcome. Thanks for coming. I'm excited to share a little bit of the story today. As you know, I wrote the new book, Return to Robinson Island. And it's been a long process of over 11 years. And it's been a hard process, and it's had its starts and its stops and it starts and it stops. And I've written other books in between, but this is my first fiction. And so I'm excited to share a little bit of that story with you, and then we'll open it up for some question and answers. And I'll also share with you a little bit of the audiobook. So I'll let you hear the first chapter and a little bit of the third chapter and a little bit of the fifth chapter. So it'll give you a little bit of an insight, but for those who have not read it, it won't be too much, all right? So you won't get anything that's really important that you read later on. So my name is TJ Hoisington, and like I said, I've written other books. They're primarily nonfiction leadership books. But I remember it was in 2003, I was watching a movie with my boys. They were 3 and 5 years old. And at the time, if you remember, Pirates of the Caribbean was coming out, the sequels to those, and there were a number of other movies where there were sequels coming out. And as I was watching the movie, and I had watched the Disney version of Swiss Family Robinson probably 20 or 30 times as a kid. And as I was watching it with my boys, I thought, why have they not done a sequel to this movie or this book? And so I didn't think much about it, and I went to bed that night, put the kids to bed, and then at 1 o'clock in the morning, I woke up with this whole story in my head. I mean, from beginning to end, I saw exactly what came next for the Robinsons. And so I got out of bed. I thought I could lay there and sleep, and I'll wake up in the next morning and write a few notes down, but I thought, no. I'll forget it. So I got out of bed and I wrote till 6 a.m. in the morning, and I wrote about 50 pages of just chicken scratch. I just wrote a bunch of bullet points and thoughts and ideas. And then I went back to sleep that morning, but I captured it. And the next day I couldn't get it off my mind. And so I started to tinker with it and work on it and try to make it a better story and clean it up. And for the next 2 months I was working on it. And I started to create a screenplay because I thought that's easier for me to write is bullet points, tell a little bit of the story, give a little bit of the descriptions, and then move on to the next scene. I never thought about writing the book. I thought, I'm going to take this screenplay and I'm going to sell it to Hollywood. But that was a wake-up call for me. Because I immediately, as I was writing it, started to call Hollywood. And you want to know what they all said over and over? They would say, quote, "We don't accept any unsolicited manuscripts." And I just got frustrated. I thought everything I'm doing isn't getting anywhere. I mean, I called, I would say, 50, 60 different production companies, and they all said the same thing. One of them was helpful, and I said, well, what can I do? And they said, well, you need an agent, so you need to go to an agency, and you need to have them represent you. So I thought, okay, great, I'll go to the talent agency, and I called them. And I said, I have this great idea. I'd love to have one of your agents represent me. And what did they say? We don't accept anybody into our agency unless they are referred by another celebrity. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is really difficult. But because I had written other books before, and one of them ended up being a bestseller, this book, If You Think You Can, I knew how to write a book, but writing a book for me is really hard, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of focus. So I remember as I started to write the screenplay early on, the boys that I put in. So if you remember the original Swiss Family Robinson book that was written in 1812, you had Fritz, the first son, the second son was Ernest, the next son was Jack, and the next son was Francis. And as I was working on it, I thought, wait a minute, because my story starts 15 years later, Fritz is now married and has to have children. And so I imagine each child, and as you read the book, you'll see their personalities in it. I imagine my own kids at the time, and so I'm going to have them stand up real quick. So in the book, the oldest boy is Nicholas, who is my son Bryce. If you'd stand up, please. So this is Bryce, stay standing. And then Jacob, rambunctious Jacob, is Connor, all right? And in the book, there's baby Ann, who's like 1 year old. And we did take a few year break between the two boys, and then our next child, Kyla, would you stand up? All right, so that's baby Ann in the book. And when you read the book, you'll find out, Julia, will you stand up on your chair real quick? Stand up on the chair. So here's little Julia, and you find out a little bit about a possibility there. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so I had to integrate her somehow later in the book as I was writing it after all these years. So one of the questions that came up was, naturally, as a businessman, I thought, do I even have the rights to write Swiss Family Robinson? And over the years, people have asked me over and over, well, how did you get the rights to write Swiss Family Robinson? So a few $1,000s later, I sent my request for a certification company out in New York City to tell me if there's a possibility that I could write something based on that book. And they came back certifying that as long as I base it on, Johann David Wyss's version from 1812, that I'm in the clear because that's in the public domain. And so I felt awesome, that was great. And then I went to my attorneys and I talked to them about some other side issues, and they verified everything. And it just sort of kind of began to work. And then when I got the okay, I worked really hard, and I knew, because Jack Canfield told me when I wrote my first book, he told me, TJ, when you write your book, remember that you have blind spots as a writer. Jack Canfield wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, and he told me at a convention I was at, we were both speaking, he said, make sure that you have 30 to 40 people read the book before you go to press. And that's exactly what I did for If You Think You Can. But I also did it with Return to Robinson Island. I had probably 20 people, and many of them are here, and I think it's awesome. And so I want to introduce the first one, which was within the first year of writing it. I asked my good friend Stacy. Stacy, would you stand up, please? So Stacy was instrumental, thank you. So Stacy was instrumental in the very beginning because she saw more of the screenplay, I think, angle of it, and she could see the picture. And she said, wait, TJ, you've got to add some stuff in the beginning, which ended up being the first 2 chapters now. Thank you. And then there's some other things she pointed out that I needed to correct. And then here's how it all works. That was the first year.